Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. And someone sent me absolutely fascinating book. It's called Visual Impact. And we had to have Pillars on the program to talk about it. So, Wendy, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, Wendy, as we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself personally, and then a little bit about your book, and finally a website where people can get it.
Okay, great. So I have been teaching all grade levels from kindergarten. Well, we say pre-K to gray, so that means the littles all the way up to older people and adults for over 25 years. And I've worked in military context, overseas, stateside, online, obviously, and in person. And I've always used visuals. I use a lot. I started with English language learners, and just using visuals helped me to clarify concepts for them. And then they were able to grasp it, and it transcended language boundaries. And it also put them at ease because I'm not a super artist. So my drawings were often silly, but it helped kids remember. So I kept using them more and more in my classroom. As for my, what was your second question? I
Oh no,
forgot.
well, no. First off, where were you born, and what's your education?
Okay, going way back then. I was born in Ashtabula, Ohio, so right up near Lake Erie,
Oh,
and I have lived in different places around the world. I joined the military right out of high school, got a degree in linguistics and Russian and peace and conflict resolution, and also did a master's in philosophy on neurotoxins and how they impact the learning brains of children.
hmm.
So yeah, I've always been a lifelong learner and I will not stop. Yes.
Okay. So, what made you? You created a book. What made you decide to do a book?
I don't know if it's cliche or not, but it's the book that I needed to see in print. It's the book that I couldn't find. I have gone to a lot of conferences and presented workshops for teachers and adults. And a lot of the times I would get the same questions. And so this book is kind of a compilation of questions I've received, but also experiences in my own classroom. What helps, what to think about, things to expand beyond the idea of, hey, this is just drawing pictures, or I need to be an artist to do this. It really, I'm just trying to encourage others to give it a try and emphasize that there's a lot of learning benefits behind its use.
Okay. Well, will you hold up the book so
I
people can see?
will. I happen to have a copy right here.
I should hope so. Well, Wendy, our program is about small business,
Yeah.
and the reason you're on the program is how does using of visuals can help someone who's running a small business?
Ooh, well, I like I said, I've used visuals a lot with education over the years, but I've in recent years I've worked with businesses and organizations to understand that, when we talk about inclusion of voices, visuals are a huge tool to do that. A lot of times, if somebody anticipates that their audience, whoever it may be, maybe their team, maybe their clients, understands something, but you know, you can say you understand something, but until you actually flesh it out, even if it's with stick figures and very simple drawings, that clarity is undeniable when you are sitting there saying, is this what you mean? No, that's not what I mean. Let me show you exactly what I mean. And so your team members will have more clarity around the steps that they need to take. Your vision becomes more crystallized when you try and if you try to sketch out your vision in one small sketch, no matter how simple, that clarifies it, it crystallizes it. And if it's crystallized for you, it's going to be crystallized for anybody else who you're trying to engage in your process or your business or your organization.
Yeah, but how do you get people who are afraid to put something down and show how bad their art? How do you get them to do it?
You know what? I love when art is bad, right? I don't believe that it's bad. I always joke that I can rock a stick figure. I'm not someone who can draw fancy, beautiful artwork in the eyes of certain people. But if I am just sketching it out, and the way to do it is to literally hand over the pen or hand over the marker and say, show me what you're thinking. And for somebody to do that who's never done it, maybe I could provide some visual vocabulary, which would be, all right, here's the context of your business. Maybe you have drop shipping for this type of product. So I would draw some kind of icon or simple sketch to represent your product. And then a simple flow chart to say, all right, here's your process. How do you get clients to purchase your product? What are the means? And so we could sketch out, maybe social media, maybe some marketing ideas or person to person contact. And we would have that. And then those icons are now a bank of visual vocabulary that you can use when you're explaining something to someone else. And I know that might sound simplistic, but when in my experience, and even personally, I can say, yes, I know what that means. But when I'm asked to draw it out, it will hurt my brain. And
Mhm.
I love it when people say, oh my gosh, that hurts my brain. And then I know that it's working. They say, well, I never thought about all of these different aspects until I sketched it out. So if I say, draw me your supply chain, and you take me through where your things are, what the beginning point of your process is and who's involved and what roles they have, then it amplifies the voices that you don't typically hear. You're like, oh, okay, well, in this process, I realize I don't have the input of the people that are responsible for this step. I need to go back and figure out what's going on with these people. And things like that is what has helped the most, where people just stop, they decelerate a little bit because there's so much going at them, coming at them, like urgency, got to get this out. Supply chain is jacked up, excuse my language, from COVID or snowvid or whatever you want to call it. And, how do I address these issues? Well, let's pinpoint and get down to the basics.
Mm. What you say sounds reasonable, but to me, it's always been the problem of getting people to actually put something down on paper. That to me is the real key. What do you do to get them uh, to see the benefits of doing this?
Generally, I would start with a couple of little icebreakers, and I really don't like the word icebreakers, but small activities just to get people thinking in a different way. So even with a sticky note, sorry about that, even with a sticky note or some kind of paper and markers, I would ask them to, sketch, well, what's your high bar today? What's your low bar today? And, I would show them, here's how you draw a little stick figure with a low bar, and then write what your lowest expectation is today. I showed up and I had my regular clothes on. I didn't have pajamas on. Perfect. Right. And there's no judgment, and there's a focus on the content that they have. So the drawing is at first it's just a means to an end, but the focus is always going to be on the content and the thinking process. I do not judge, and I talk to people about not judging your artwork because there is so much that is underlying even the simplest of visuals and lines. If you ask a 4-year-old what all those squiggly lines are on his or her drawing, they will sit there for an hour and tell you what that story is behind those lines. It's the same thing with adults. If they're given that opportunity and say, all right, I want you to just draw something that represents your product. You can't draw your product, but draw something that represents your product or your organization. One small sketch. And it doesn't have to, maybe it's a star. And you say, great, tell me more about that. And there's no judgment. There's no expectation of perfection or, and then again with constraints, if you give a small sticky note, then that also eases the fear and the anxiety. So no judgment, constraints, time constraints. You can say, all right, 2 minutes, give me a representation. And automatically it's people are engaged. You're not talking at them, you are working with them. And it gives a whole different kind of collaborative feel to the work that we are doing.
That's terrific. Your book and where people can get it, your book title, etc.
So again, the book is Visual Impact, Transform Communication in Your Boardroom, your classroom, or thanks to COVID, your living room. But it's for parents too. And it is on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com.
Well, I'm going to throw a wild one at you. There are autistic children. That some people have argued that you can use drawings to draw them out. Do you have any comments on that? That's way out of left field, but that happens to be something I know about.
You said autistic children?
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the benefits that I've actually experienced with autistic children is using visuals for them to get a good schedule so that they know where they're going. So they know that if you have like a card, for example, and a visual is on that card and it represents lunchtime, then they know, okay, this goes with the schedule up on the wall, or this is what I am going to do next. And they can match those visuals. It gives them, in my experience, I know everyone is different, but it gives them a sense of, okay, I'm in the right space, I'm in the right place, like I match these visuals. And then just having them trace visuals at first, like I will maybe draw a couple of sketches and gray out the sketch if it goes with a certain topic that we're learning, for example, astronomy. I can gray out sketches of different planets, maybe a fun astronaut or something, and then they can trace it until they feel comfortable enough to draw it themselves, or just be comfortable saying, all right, you know what, I traced it, now I can color it how I want to. And then as we go through our notes, they can add those icons into their notes and feel somewhat successful just by adding that additional piece in there.
Okay. Let's take any chapter you want from the book and tell us why you did it and how it can benefit us.
I love it. Any chapter. So can I just explain how this, sorry about the bells, that should be the last one. So the way the book is set up, there's one page of text and it's followed by a visual. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to walk my talk, basically. So if I'm explaining about metacognition, I wanted to show the text version of it and what it would look like if I were to synthesize it visually. And so this is one example. Metacognition. So each of these chapters, it's all in alphabetical order. There are topics from A to Z, literally. But the metacognitive piece is really important for me because I know that everyone does learn differently and in different spaces and times. And for example, the autistic children that I've worked with, just the different pace when they're off the screen and they have a pencil or a marker in their hand, it's a time to breathe. Like you can feel just this settling of kind of a peaceful atmosphere when kids are drawing. And it is unlike anything else. They get into a sense of flow. And I know that it doesn't always work every single day. It's not something I do every single class for every single lesson. There are certain elements, certain places that lend themselves to it. And the same with organizations and businesses. But I also ask the kids and the people that I'm working, the adults that I'm working with, how do you feel? Like, how does this help you learn? And how do you, what details stand out to you and why? And then why would you visualize those? Or why would you represent them? How would you represent them? But doing this allows for that processing time in an organic way, which other things don't.
Well, let me then ask a different question. What about color? Is it better to put in a red, give them a red pencil or a blue pencil or black? Is there the effect of color on what you do?
That's a fun question. I generally, if I am asking kids to take notes, I will encourage them to use one dark color and one or maybe two highlight colors. But if I'm focused, I want them to focus on the cognitive process, right? The thinking, the getting the notes down. I've found that if I say, here's a box full of markers, they will spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make it pretty. And most of the time I'm not looking for it to be pretty. I'm looking for connections. I'm looking for their synthesis of the material, and I'm looking for how they might break it apart into different chunks. So for my focus, a lot of times I will say one or two colors, but one should be darker, usually black, and then one highlight color.
Well, what if you're dealing with adults in a corporate situation? Does color have an effect?
I don't know. A lot of times if I'm working with a corporate area, one of the first questions I'll ask them is, what are your brand colors?
Hmm.
And we'll focus on that. But if we are brainstorming, for example, I might use color to encode certain topics. Like if we want to do a pre-assessment, the learning portion and the post-assessment, those could be different colors. Or if we want to do current roles and next steps, those could be different colors. But I also want to be really attuned to visibility. So if I'm working on a large board or a large piece of paper, I definitely want people that are sitting a few feet away to be able to see what we're doing so they don't feel left out. So the darker colors reign. But I also feel that too many colors can be distracting. So
Yeah.
it's also it's something I would discuss with whoever I'm working with at the business.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. What would you like to talk about?
Wow. Well, I think it goes back to your one question eh, about people just feeling hesitant to do this in the first place. I know when I started doing this at the high school level, there were teachers that asked me, are you just going to go and draw pictures again today? And I said, yes, I am. So I think it's one of those, or I know it's definitely one of those activities that you need to try in order to experience the benefits. And I encourage anybody to even make one small sketch. If you're listening to a talk or you're on the phone in a meeting and you say, okay, I'm going to pull out three main points from this conversation. What would they be and how would I represent them? And you don't have to share them with anyone, but you can look at it and say, oh, okay, did this help me remember and recall what we just talked about better? Was it distracting for me? Was it enhancing for me? Can I share this easily with someone else? So there are a lot of different ways to look at it. And there's no one right way, which makes it really, really fun.
Okay. Your book again, and where people could get it.
All right. One more time. Visual impact, transform communication in your boardroom, classroom, or living room. It is 260 pages. It's on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com.
Okay. I just I had one more thought on all of this, you, which went totally out of my head. But I guess the point I'd like to make is you're asking people. Um, oh, I know what it is. When I'm bored in a meeting, I draw. Do you, do you ever look at what people draw when they think it's just for them? And if so, what does that often tell you if you do it?
Um, well, I know that from some of the research that I've read, there are very famous people that have doodled during meetings and taken notes like that during meetings. So I would count yourself in a higher intellectual group. There you go. Um, as far as me analyzing what their visuals might represent afterwards, no, I'm not going to go there.
Well, on that note, Wendy Pillar, we're going to say thank you for a very, very interesting time together. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. I hope you're warm where you guys are.